I have told you that there is a stream of spiritual energy that flows into the material universe and is gradually lowered in vibration through the 4 levels of the identity, mental, emotional, and finally the physical spectrum. In the material level, energy first appears as energy waves, but then eventually is lowered to the spectrum that human beings call matter. This is still energy, but to the human senses it appears as solid matter, even though you know that atoms have large amounts of empty space between the core and the electrons. How does this knowledge form the basis for a new view of the body? Since you went to school, you have been programmed to view the world in a way that is very much based on the physical senses, which means it is centered around matter. Science is very much focused on matter, even to the point of many scientists believing that if a theory purposes a cause that is beyond matter, it is not a scientific theory. As one example of this, you have no doubt been shown a magnet and how there is a field around it in the form of concentric elliptical lines. You have been told since childhood that the magnet produces the field, and you have believed this statement since you did not know better. Many spiritual people have come to believe that everything has an energy field around it, including their physical bodies. Yet, most of them believe that this works the same way as a magnet, namely that the physical body produces the energy field. Can you see that this worldview is a sensory-based worldview? The physical senses can see the body but cannot see the energy field, so the senses automatically assume that what they see is the cause and anything unseen must be merely an effect. In reality, science should have long ago set itself free from this outdated sensory-based worldview. Thus, you should have been brought up with an expanded worldview. Yet, since that was not the case, it is now up to all spiritual people to free their minds from the sensory-based materialistic worldview in which every phenomenon must have a material cause. So, what is the consequence for the body? The consequence is that your body does not produce the energy field. It is the energy field that produces the body. Your energy field has 4 levels. The highest in vibration is the identity level. Even at this higher level, there is a blueprint for your physical body. If you have a correct sense of identity and as a spiritual being with a higher purpose, the blueprint of your body will be one that supports your divine plan, which in some cases can involve dealing with a physical disease. There is another, more detailed blueprint of your body in the mental mind and another in the emotional. Finally, there is a blueprint of the body in the material spectrum, and this blueprint is, naturally, what spells out the physical characteristics of your body. In fact, the energy field in the material spectrum has a part of it that is so dense that it appears physical to your senses, which is what you call your body. I need you to contemplate what I am saying here, although I realize that for most people it will take some time to integrate these ideas. You have no doubt seen the model of an atom that looks like a miniature solar system with a nucleus and some electrons orbiting it like planets. All so-called solid matter is made up of such atoms, but when you look at the model, you see that the atom is mostly empty space. You have no doubt heard that your body is made up of 70% water, so it is not nearly as solid as it seems. Yet now go one step further and realize that your body is made up of 100% atoms, but that atoms are made up of over 99% empty space. The distances between the nucleus and the electrons in most atoms are relatively greater than the distance between the Earth and the Sun. In other words, an atom is made up of a small fraction of so-called subatomic particles, and the rest is empty space. And this is true for all matter. What does this actually mean? Well, as one example, consider the question of whether people can walk through walls, as some spiritual teachers, myself included, are repudiated to have done. If your body is mostly empty space and the wall is mostly empty space, there is theoretically plenty of empty space in the wall for the very small percentage of subatomic particles in your body to pass through. So, why can't your body pass through walls? Well, there is a technical explanation, but science is not yet developed enough to actually have the vocabulary to explain it. So let us use everyday language and say that matter has two basic properties, an alpha and an omega aspect. The alpha aspect is emptiness and the omega aspect is solidity. Of course, you can have various combinations of these two qualities. For example, diamonds are very solid, while air is more empty than solid. So, you have two options for viewing matter, and they are parallel to the old question of whether the glass is half full or half empty. It is all a matter of perspective. If you look at the world through the filter of the physical senses, you see the world in terms of solidity, and thus your body cannot pass through a wall. Yet, if you could shift your perspective away from the senses, you would see the world in terms of emptiness, and then it would be easy for you to pass the body through a wall. The point is that your mind can perceive the world through the senses, or it can perceive the world beyond the senses, often called extrasensory perception. The physical senses are designed to detect energy waves within a certain spectrum of frequencies, namely the material spectrum. Anything that vibrates within that spectrum will tend to appear solid to the senses. For example, you might have seen an airplane propeller that spins so quickly that it appears as a solid disc. Yet, if you slow down the movements, you see that the disc is not solid at all. Likewise, matter only appears solid because it vibrates at a certain level that the senses perceive as solid. If you shift your perspective, you see that the appearance of solidity is only a matter of perspective. You cannot do this with the senses, but your mind can go beyond the senses, even though 99% of human beings have allowed their minds to be imprisoned by the senses. Now, consider the biblical account of me walking on water. Why did the weight of my body not sink into the water? Well, the senses view the body as solid and a wall as solid, but they view the water as softer, more empty, meaning that while a wall stops the body, the water allows it to pass through it. Yet, when you shift your perspective, you see that when you focus on the body emptiness and the wall's emptiness, the body can pass through the wall. So if you focus on the body's emptiness and the water's solidity, then the water can support the weight of the body, as can thin air, which explains the many reports of spiritual teachers levitating. You will recall my statement that those who believe on me shall do the works that I did, and even greater works. Does that mean I want my modern-day disciples to perform the miracles I performed 2,000 years ago? Not necessarily, since times have changed. My miracles were aimed at changing people's perception of what is possible, and this is always our aim for doing anything. Yet, since humankind's consciousness has been expanded dramatically over the past 2,000 years, the situation is different today. So, there will be different ways to demonstrate mastery in today's world. Nevertheless, I still want my modern-day disciples to develop the mastery of mind over matter, and that begins by understanding why it is possible for the mind to take command over solid matter. The explanation is, as we have already touched upon, that everything in the world of form is made from one basic substance, namely the matter light, which can take on any form. Yet, the light takes on a specific form only when a self-aware being creates a mental image and uses the mind's ability to superimpose or project that image upon the matter light. My point is that everything in the material universe has no actual or objective existence, as modern science calls it. Everything is a projection of mental images, which has actually been proven by the science of quantum physics. It might be helpful for you to read one of the many popular science books on the findings of quantum physics. The consequence is that your physical body is a creation of the mind. Obviously, your conscious mind did not create your body, but your higher mind did. Yet, your current body was not created from scratch, as they say, since it is part of a creative process that has been occurring on this planet for millions of years. Therefore, your body was not created on a blank slate, but is partly affected by the current state of affairs on Earth, including the density of the collective consciousness. This explains why most people think their minds have no power over their bodies. They are so overwhelmed by the weight of the collective consciousness that they cannot conceive of going beyond it. Yet, as a disciple of Christ, you need to realize that you cannot follow Christ and at the same time follow the mass consciousness. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve God and Mammon, meaning the mass consciousness. So it is a natural and inescapable part of the path to Christhood that you raise your mind above the mass mind and begin to shift your sense of identity back to the spiritual being you are, reconnecting to the individuality that is anchored in your I Am presence. As a natural part of this process, you need to begin to see your body as a creation of the mind. Therefore, your body is subservient to your mind, meaning that it has the potential to be subservient to and supportive of your divine plan. For some people, it is part of their divine plan to take on certain physical diseases or limitations, often to demonstrate how to overcome them physically or mentally. Yet you need to move toward a point where your physical body is not in any way hindering or slowing down the fulfillment of your divine plan. This includes a greater awareness of cravings that center around the physical body and how they influence your mind. I have said that your body is not your enemy, but is the passport that gives your higher being entry into the material world. Yet, because your body is in the material world and because your mind is intimately tied to it, the influence goes both ways. Because the body is truly a projection of a mental image in the mind, your conscious self has the potential to take command over your body. Yet, unless you do take command, your body will overwhelm your conscious self, and your life will be controlled by the cravings of the body. That is why so many people identify themselves with, or even as, a physical body, with nothing more to their identity, thinking they will cease to exist when the body dies, which truly is no way to live, for it is a state of spiritual death. Let us now consider that your physical body is extremely complex. In fact, far more complex and sophisticated than most technology. Your body has many functions that are so complex that if you were to direct them consciously, your conscious mind would quickly be overwhelmed. Thus, your body is designed in such a way that most of its functions can take place without your conscious mind telling the body what to do or how to do it. You do not have to tell your body to breathe in oxygen, to pump the blood around, or to digest food. You might know that your body is made of individual cells, and inside each cell is a miniature machinery. I'm not sure of the pronunciation. Inside each cell is a miniature machinery that is almost as complex as the organs and nervous system of the body. Yet again, the cells function without you having to consciously direct them. Your body is made of 50 trillion of individual cells, yet all of these cells are tied together in a coherent whole. The 50 trillion cells can move as one body, and your conscious mind can tell the body where to go, and it will, generally speaking, do so. Yet, you also know that while your conscious mind can direct the body, the influence goes both ways. If your body has not had enough rest, it will influence your sense of well-being. And if your body is low on food, your mood is quickly affected. This can now give us a new perspective on cravings. I generally do not like comparing everything to machines, but there is some value in likening the body to a very complex piece of machinery. In fact, the body machine is so complex that it is controlled by a very sophisticated computer. This computer has a number of individual programs that direct various functions of the body, such as breathing, metabolism, and so on. These programs are, generally speaking, designed to ensure the survival of your individual body by meeting its physical needs, including food, shelter, and rest. Yet, the computer that directs your individual body was not developed just to serve your body. In fact, it is part of a very long process of experimentation that goes back millions of years. The point being that your body computer has a very complex programming that is directed toward not only ensuring the survival of your individual body, but also ensuring the survival of the human race as a whole. In fact, to continue in computer terminology, your individual computer is networked to a large mainframe computer, namely the collective consciousness of humankind. In some cases, an individual body computer can be taken over by the mainframe computer, which has programs that are designed to ensure the survival of the race. One example of such an overall program is the need for sex, which is not exclusively an individual need, but is designed to propagate the race, even though bearing children is somewhat of a sacrifice for the individual. Likewise, an overall program can cause people to sacrifice the lives of their physical bodies to ensure the survival of a well-defined group, as, for example, to defend their family or by going to war to defend their country. The survival of the whole will sometimes override the survival of the individual. I know this has been a long and roundabout discussion, but you might remember that we started out talking about cravings. So it might be tempting at this point to reason that the subconscious computer programs that are designed to ensure the survival of the body and the race is what causes you to have cravings for food, sleep, sex, and so on. This is both true and not true, but to understand this, we need to take a closer look at how I define cravings. In the broadest sense, we might say that a craving is a longing or desire for something you don't have. It causes you to feel a need to act in order to get the object you crave, and you feel unsatisfied, hungry, unfulfilled, perhaps even unhappy or unwhole until you get it. Yet, what I want to bring to your attention is that there are two layers of cravings. The lowest layer is a simple craving, such as a feeling of being hungry. This is the kind of craving that is born out of a program that ensures the survival of the body. You feel hungry, you eat, you feel full, and the craving is forgotten. Yet, beyond that is a craving that does not go away even when the physical need is fulfilled. It is a deeper craving, an emotional, even mental craving that cannot simply be fulfilled by acquiring the object of the craving. Let us consider a couple of examples. Animals do not have a consciousness that is as sophisticated as that of humans. A cow, for example, is not aware that it is a cow, and it does not consciously choose to behave as a cow. It instinctively behaves as a cow. Thus, we might say that the actions of animals are almost exclusively based on the need for the physical survival of the individual and the race. For example, all animals eat, but they eat only to survive, the consequence being that you rarely see an overweight animal. Compare this to humans, where an increasing number of people in Western countries are so overweight that it actually threatens the long-term survival of their bodies. In other words, animals eat to live, and once the survival of the body is secured, they stop eating. Humans have the ability to go beyond the mere need for survival and eat because of a need that is not aimed at, and thus cannot spring from, the survival of the body. We now see that if people were functioning exclusively based on the programming of their body computers, they would eat only what was needed to ensure the survival of their physical bodies, and then they would stop eating. As another example, consider that animals breed, yet this is entirely directed by the need to propagate the race. At these times of the year, the hormones kick in, and both male and female representatives of a species develop a need for sexual activities. Yet once the optimal period is over, the need disappears, and the individuals are now back to the behavior of eating and sleeping. Yet in humans, you see some individuals whose lives are consumed by a craving for sex. If you think about this logically, you realize that even in the animal kingdom, there is a limit to how many babies need to be born by one individual member of a higher species of mammals. Thus, there is no survival value in a human constantly feeling a craving for sex. Again, we see that humans have the ability to develop cravings that go far beyond the survival programs of the physical body. My overall point here is that you are currently in physical embodiment, which means that you are expressing yourself through a physical body. In order to give you the capacities you have with a body, the body is a very complex biological machine, which means that it has certain built-in computer programs designed to ensure the survival of your individual body and the race. Now, let me return to the concept held by some spiritual people that your body is an enemy of spiritual growth or that it is evil. We can now see that this is simply a primitive form of reasoning. The reality is that your body is designed with survival in mind, meaning that the computer that runs the body is designed to ensure your individual survival and the long-term survival of the whole. As long as you are in the body, you will experience this as certain bodily needs such as food, rest, sex, and so on. You obviously need your body to survive in order to have a platform for your expression in the material universe. Thus, there is nothing wrong with taking care of the physical needs of the body. It is a completely artificial construct that religious or spiritual people see the body as sinful and have a highly contrary view of the body's functions, including the need for sex. In reality, there is nothing wrong or sinful about spiritual people taking care of the needs of their bodies. However, this is not the same as saying that spiritual people can eat as much as they want or have as much sex as they want. You need to realize that you only have a certain amount of time, attention, and energy, so you need to decide how to spend it in a way that helps the fulfillment of your divine plan. Most people in the Western world have grown up without having any sense of spiritual purpose to their lives, so they have been programmed by society to be perfect consumers, meaning that people continue to consume. Many people do whatever feels good at the moment without considering long-term, let alone spiritual consequences. This is obviously partly what I meant when I said you cannot serve both God and Mammon. As a spiritual person, you need to decide how you set your priorities. Be careful to realize that I am hereby saying you need to become an ascetic who deprives yourself of anything related to the body. In today's world, most spiritual people need to lead active lives, which involves taking care of their physical needs. However, what you need to strive for is a state of mind where taking care of your physical needs is driven by the natural drive for survival, whereby I mean that you do what is needed and then forget about the need. In other words, your life is not consumed by cravings for food or sex that are never satisfied and end up consuming your time, energy, and attention, thereby preventing you from focusing on your divine plan. In other words, there is nothing wrong with satisfying the natural cravings of the body, but you need to make an effort to raise yourself above any craving that is beyond the body's survival needs. And in order to do this, you need to understand where unnatural cravings come from. The essential difference between a natural craving and an unnatural craving is that a natural craving can be filled, whereas an unnatural one can never be satisfied. You might have seen people who remain unsatisfied no matter how much they eat, how much sex they have, how much money they have, or how much power they wield. I'm not sure how we pronounce it. An unnatural craving is like a bottomless pit that can never be filled, like a black hole that pulls everything into itself but never gives anything back in. Filling your natural cravings will not disturb your life or prevent you from fulfilling your divine plan. Taking care of your body's need for food, even sex, should be no more distracting than breathing. Yet, trying to fulfill unnatural cravings is an impossible quest, and it can quickly take over people's lives to the point where their divine plans become secondary or forgotten. You might have heard about the quest for the Holy Grail, which is actually a metaphor for the path to Christhood. Yet, seeking to fulfill unnatural cravings is the quest for the unholy grail, the grail that can never be filled, and thus is the cup that never runneth over. Where do unnatural cravings come from? Good question. Well, since they cannot come from the survival programming of the body computer, they must come from the higher levels of the mind, namely the conscious mind and the emotional, mental, and identity levels. In order to understand the origin of cravings, you need to realize that your life stream was designed to be a co-creator with God. Thus, you have two built-in desires that are very much God's desires, seeking fulfillment in you. Take note that I have talked about unnatural cravings and not about desires. The word desire actually means deity sires. And the Creator has a desire which is the driving force behind the creation of the world of form. One aspect of God's desire is the desire to become more through treating you and other self-aware beings. In your being, this is manifest as two separate but linked desires. One, the alpha aspect is a desire for oneness with your source. This can ultimately be fulfilled only when you attain full God consciousness. But it is the driving force behind your spiritual quest and your sense that there is something more than the material world. 2. The omega aspect is a desire to become more in this world, namely by expressing your God-given creative powers in order to make the world more like the kingdom of God. When you put these two desires together, you see that on one hand, you have a desire that reaches beyond this world, and on the other hand is a desire that seeks fulfillment in this world. This is designed to give you the desire to express yourself in this world without getting lost in this world. In other words, you naturally seek to experience more in the material world, but you always know that ultimate fulfillment can be found only in oneness with your source. As long as you are in a balanced state, there is no conflict between these two desires. By attaining the Christ consciousness, you will actually feel a great sense of oneness with your source. I and my Father are one, while expressing yourself in this world. My Father worked hitherto and I work. Or I and my mother are one. It's the same. Different but the same. Two aspects of God. The problem comes in when a life stream becomes blinded by the duality consciousness and builds an identity as a being who is separated from God. This causes the live stream to believe in the image of the external God, and the consequence is that your longing for oneness with your source cannot be satisfied. How can you achieve oneness with a God that you see as being outside yourself, thus believing there will always be a distance between you and God? Such live streams are tempted by the prince of this world to seek ultimate fulfillment in the material world by seeking to get more of what this world has to offer. Thus, they throw themselves into the quest of seeking some ultimate state in the material world, while not realizing it is an impossible quest. They seek more of this world instead of more than this world. An unnatural craving starts in the identity body, by you building the sense of identity that you are a being who is separated from your source, from God. Thus, you see yourself as being outside of God's kingdom, and you see the material world as being separated from God's kingdom. You see yourself as unwhole, meaning that you are condemned to seeking wholeness in this world instead of seeking wholeness through oneness with your source. On the mental level, this causes your mind to believe in the illusion of lack, namely that there is not enough resources in this world. The inevitable result is that you engage in the dualistic struggle of competing with other people for the scarce resources you think represent reality. You do this instead of following Mother Mary's teaching to bring more abundance into this world. On the emotional level, you feel unwhole, and you think that in order to feel whole and fulfilled, you need to obtain something in this world. This gives rise to the fear of loss, which then opens your emotional mind to the many negative emotions that spring from the struggle against other people, whom you must perceive as trying to take from you the resources you need in order to obtain wholeness. Your emotional mind actually believes you can find wholeness in this world, if only you can get enough food, money, powers, sex, possessions, or whatever you have come to see as the means of fulfillment. Thus, on the conscious level, your attention is eaten up by the endless quest to acquire and accumulate what you see as the means to the ultimate end. Once you have bought into this deception, you actually create several subconscious computer programs that will take the survival programs of the body and add a component. That is why the natural cravings of the body are now turned into unnatural cravings that can never be satisfied. And that is how the natural cravings become a treadmill that can keep you trapped for an indefinite period of time, or at least until you begin to suspect that there must be more to life than this, which turns you into a spiritual seeker rather than a pleasure seeker. Yet, while this does explain cravings, I need you to go to an even higher level and realize what is really going on here. It all starts with the illusion that you are a separate being, living in a world dominated by lack. Once you believe in this illusion, the focus of your attention is to satisfy the desire of the separate self. Thus, you seek to possess something for the separate self, which means you must protect it from other people who are also seeking to possess for their separate selves. Yet, now reach back to what I described as the design of your being. You are designed to be a co-creator with God. This does not mean that you seek to fulfill the desires of the separate self. It means you see yourself as one with your source. Otherwise, how can you co-create with God and thus you see yourself as an individual part of a larger whole, namely the body of God. When you have this correct sense of identity, you are not seeking to fulfill the desires of the separate self, for you have no separate self. Instead, you see the underlying oneness of all life, and thus you know that what is truly best for you as an individual being is what is best for the all. In fact, you know that the world of form is designed specifically to give the abundant life to all self-aware beings. There are some spiritual seekers, even some spiritual teachers, who subscribe to the belief that the ultimate goal of the spiritual path is that your individuality disappears into union with God, or nirvana, or whatever it is called. Yet, your Creator did not create you for the purpose of having you go through a long process of building your individuality only to have it disappear. Instead, you are meant to win immortality for your spiritual identity through the process of the ascension. Once that goal is reached, you do not disappear. You start another phase in your self-expression. My point is that focusing on some distant end goal can be a subtle distraction on the path. You are designed to be a co-creator with God, so you do not find fulfillment in disappearing, but in co-creating. My point is that ultimate fulfillment does not necessarily come at the end of a long journey. It can be found on every step of the journey. However, and here is the crucial point, it can never be found when you approach the journey through the filter of the separate self. It can be found only by going beyond that self and realizing that you are co-creating with your God. And in doing so, you experience oneness with your source while still in the world of form. You are experiencing the ultimate fulfillment of being part of the outpicturing of God's desire to raise the entire material universe to the abundance of the kingdom of God. Do you truly see the point here? The key to fulfillment is not the eradication of desire, as many spiritual people believe. Some have even misinterpreted the teachings of the Buddha and think he said the source of all suffering is desire. Thus, the goal of spiritual people is to destroy desire. However, doing so is seeking to destroy the very life force within you, which can never lead to spiritual progress. What the Buddha really said was that the cause of suffering is wrong desire. And we can now see that wrong desire is a desire centered around the needs of the separate self. So, what is the real key to overcoming cravings? It is not to destroy all desires. It is to elevate your desires and purify them of all selfishness by reconnecting to your spiritual identity and the reason why your life stream originally chose to come into the material realm. Obviously, reconnecting to your spiritual identity is the ultimate goal of the path to Christhood, and it might seem like it is far off at your present stage. However, I hope to help you see that you have already started this process. If you had not, you would not be studying this course, but would be fully engaged in seeking fulfillment for some desire of the separate self. So, what you need to contemplate is that in a distant past, your life stream was existing in the spiritual realm, and it was the decision to send an extension of itself down into the material world. You did this in order to express your spiritual individuality in this world and thus help raise the material world to the perfection That is the kingdom of God. In other words, you came here out of a true desire. And as you gradually connect to that desire, you will find it increasingly easier to let go of the desires of the separate self and rediscover the true desires of your spiritual self. Exercise for key 5. Okay. The exercise. In order to help you build a momentum of this process, I will give you some tools. I started out this key by thinking about the spiritual poisons and the Dhyani Buddhas. The Buddha that is associated with desire or cravings is called Amitabha, and his particular God quality is the perfect antidote to the spiritual poison of cravings, lust, and greed. That God quality is wisdom, specifically discriminating wisdom, which gives you the ability to discern between the true desires of God and the false desires of the separate self. So what you need to do in the coming 33 days is to contemplate the difference between true and false desires. You also need to become aware of when and how you are being tempted by your ego and the prince of this world to engage in a selfish desire. And when you feel the temptation coming on, you need to invoke the discriminating wisdom of the Buddha Amitabha. 8 Dhyani Buddha has a mantra based on the Buddha's seed syllable. You may know that the oldest language known on earth is Sanskrit, which is unique in the sense that there is a close connection between the sound and the form. Sound is a major creative force, as described in the biblical statement, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. In other words, the Creator used sound to generate the energy impulse that created light. So, there is great power in intoning the sound that invokes the presence of a Dhyani Buddha, and the mantra for invoking the presence of Amitabha is Om Amitabha Hri, H-R-I-H. Or Hi. I don't know how to pronounce it. Om Amitabha Hri, or Rai. Thus, during the next month, I want you to be very alert to the temptation to engage in selfish desires. As soon as you feel the temptation, and the sooner you notice it, the easier it will be to overcome it. As we will discuss in the next key, you start reciting the mantra silently or aloud as the situation warrants, and you keep going until you begin to feel the peace of the Buddha Amitabha in your energy field. You can even visualize the presence of this Buddha in your energy field as an image of complete serenity and peace. Why is the Buddha at peace? Because he has the perfect discriminating wisdom and thus can never be tempted by the false desires of the ego and the prince of this world. When you cannot be tempted, there is no need to fear temptation. On top of this exercise, I also want you to give once a day Mother Mary's Rosary of Miracle Gratitude. However, I want you to substitute the standard Hail Mary with the one from another rosary called the Nurturance Rosary. Thus, instead of saying the standard Hail Mary for the Gratitude Rosary, you say this one. Hail Mary, I am whole, I am complete within my soul, I am nurtured, I am free, one with God in eternity. Holy Mary, by your grace, I am transcending time and space. I see God's perfect light in me. I am the Son. I am the Son. I love life free. All these little texts are like a song. You can always replace the name of the master by the name of your presence, the I am present. For example, I have a note in my book, it's full of notes, of lines, and it's written, Hail, I am present, I am whole, I am complete within my soul, I'm nurtured, I'm free, one with God in eternity. Holy, I am present, by your grace, I am transcending time and space. I see God's perfect light in me. I am the sun, I love life free. You see? So, there is different names, Buddhic name, Christic names, Ascended Master names, but if you feel, if your feeling is good with that, it's okay, but if you prefer to change the name by another name or by a spiritual concept or name for you, change it, because it's important to feel comfortable, to feel in confidence when we use the power of the word to create things in our life and in our consciousness. Okay, the last paragraphs in the page and in the chapter 5. I also want you to say the mantra of the Dhyani Buddha for this key one time after each verse and before the Hail Mother of Nurturance, like a song, like the little words that we repeat in the song to feel it deeply inside of us. Why gratitude? The rosary of gratitude. Because gratitude is also an effective antidote against the cravings that spring from the fear of loss, the sense of being incomplete because you do not have something in this world. Thus, as the writing exercise for this key, I want you to write down, after giving the rosary, instances from your life where you have felt that you did not have enough or where you have acted on a craving for more. Also, write down things for which you are grateful. Then look for a pattern to emerge that shows how your life has been affected by the sense of lack and how you have already taken some steps toward overcoming it. Based on this understanding of the forces that have shaped your life, you can begin to evaluate which activities in the material world are aimed at fulfilling your true desires and which are based on false desires. Thus, you can begin to consider how to rise above activities that detract from your ability to fulfill your divine plan. You can then approach a point where all your activities either help fulfill your divine plan or do not detract from it. In this way, you will be able to give up certain activities without forcing yourself to do so and thus experiencing it as a loss. Instead, you will give up an activity out of love because you see that giving up something that limits you opens the way for greater freedom and fulfillment. No activity on earth can give you the same fulfillment as seeing your divine plan come to fruition. You may think this was a very long explanation to help you overcome cravings. However, we have also set a foundation for dealing with other spiritual poisons, and in the coming keys, we will build upon it. In the next video, I will read the key 6, Raising Anger Above Fear. Special. Okay, thanks again to watch this, to listen this, to integrate this in your life. I hope you consider like me that Yeshua, the ascended Master Jesus, or Yeshua Christos, is a wonderful teacher. For me, he fills my heart, my soul, way I cannot describe. Okay. So I will stop here, and I see the beauty by the Palacio door. I'm not sure it's the good word. In French is la porte patio, or the window door. And there is a big trees, and since some days small pieces of green are on the branches, so the new color of green is there, and in 2-3 weeks it will be completely green. So it's beautiful, but I cannot turn the video camera this way because so much light enter, and you have seen it in another video. It's like it's very dark, but in reality it's full of light. Okay, I wish you a good end of day. Bye bye.